Welcome everybody back to Rob's MetalWorks. We are here at the home studio this evening for a one-of-a-kind interview with a musician who now we can call our own from right here in the Alamo City. Brings me great pleasure to welcome a drummer extraordinaire, kick-ass person and friend, the man. How are you doing, sir? Great to have you here at the home studio.
Great, man. I'm doing great. It's great to see you and finally get in here and do this. I can't believe I've been here so long and I've never done an interview, I don't think, with you, unless we did it back in the Pitbull days, you know.
Well, I know you were running around back then.
Well, yeah, life was a little crazier than it is now, that's for sure.
You know, when people talk about drummers in Texas, you know, your name definitely pops up. Okay, people know Jason West now. And I remember, you know, we'll go ahead and get started. I remember back many years ago, I want to say, you know, 03, 04, around that time, I first came to know of you when you first started playing with Pitbull Daycare. And you started doing shows here in San Antonio, and definitely at that time you were already kind of shining. People were looking at you and said, man, this guy's such a great performer. And I told you the other night when I saw you, I said, you know, I loved what you did back in the day because you were such a hard hitter, but now you have the hard hitting, but now you have this elegance and style of that you've kind of created on your own. Now, for those people who may not know Jason West before Pitbull Daycare, because obviously they recruited you into the band for a reason, share a little bit about your early beginnings.
Okay, well, my early beginnings, I'm originally from Rockford, Illinois, which is about an hour west, top of the state from Chicago, like right near the Wisconsin border. The home of Cheap Trick, my favorite band out of all times. Just because, you know, growing up, I grew up on it, you know, and my dad was always playing them, and it's kind of what got me into music, and you know, made me want to start playing drums. You know, I got the goosebumps from music the first time listening to Live at Budokan when it came out on CDs, and there's dating yourself. Remember when CDs came out? I was like, what are these little silver things, you know, like what did he do with this? And my dad had bought Budokan on CD, and I remember they went from Hello There to Come On, Come On. I just remember like getting the goosebumps, and I was like, I want to play drums. My dad was a drummer.
Oh, okay.
And he gave up playing, went into the Air Force, you know, when I was real young, so we always had the drums at the house. I just never thought about doing anything with them, and then that's kind of when it started. So, you know, they got me a practice pad kit to start on, you know, because like the kit that my dad had was like an old Slingerland kit from the late 60s, early 70s. I still have to this day, and they were just, I just played them last night actually. But
how old were you at that time?
I was about 10 or 11, and yeah, so they got me the practice pad kit to see if I was going to take it seriously, you know, and not like get these drums out and start, you know, pummeling the crap out of them and destroying them or anything like that. And yeah, I mean, they saw that I took it seriously, so they let me have the drums, and I played in cover bands all through, like, I started playing in cover bands with my uncle every weekend in the bars, you know, usually like Thursday, Friday, and Saturday when I was like 12. My mom had to go with me to all these gigs, you know, because I was underage. I was so young, you know. It was. I guess I'm lucky that they would even let me into these bars to do this, you know. So it was strange, like, you know. We play Sunday nights too. You know, I'd have to play, you know, and then get up and go to school on Monday mornings, like all these kids, you know. When you get to the age where you start getting your first part-time jobs and stuff, you know. I remember like being at school and people were like, yeah, I had to work all weekend, it sucked, and I was just like, wow, man, I've played, you know, like 3 gigs and, you know, made a couple $100. Man, I got it pretty lucky, you know. So yeah, I mean, I did that, and then I decided, you know, being in Rockford wasn't the place for me if I was going to do anything musically, because it's just not a lot going on. and the winters are brutal.
Yeah.
And I was getting fed up with that, you know. So I ended up moving down to Sarasota, Florida when I was, man, I must have been like 21 or 22. And I moved down there and automatically hooked up with a blues artist from Houston, which is weird, named Sherman Robertson. And I ended up going to Europe, all over Europe, UK, all kinds of stuff. You know, that was like my first real touring experience. Was, I mean, literally the day I got there, you know, I got hooked up with this thing. And then, a good buddy of mine, his name's Pat Betts. He was an awesome drummer from Rockford area, and he moved to Sarasota, so he got me over there and got me hooked up with this gig and stuff. So, yeah, I did that, and then I ended up moving to Dallas for a while, and was playing with Sherman, and then I got a call from this band back in Sarasota, Florida, called Neurotica.
Yeah.
And I had heard of Neurotica. My friend, when I still lived up in Rockford, my friend sent me a cassette tape of this radio show, and he's like, check out this band, Neurotica, you know, I think, you know, it's up your alley, it's stuff you might like. And I really dug it. I was like, man, it's a cool band. And so I was kind of a fan, you know, of the thing. And when they called me, it was like, dude, like, you know, we'll give you the job, you know, if you move back here, we'll just give it to you, you know, they'd never seen me play or nothing. We'll give it to you. Like, you know, he's asking me questions like, so if we had to play a show like tomorrow, like, could you get through it? I was like, yeah, dude, I could get through it.
Because you knew their songs and stuff.
I knew all their stuff.
Yeah.
I had never played them physically on the drums, but,
Right.
you know, it was all up here.
Yeah.
So, that, yeah, I mean, literally the first time I played with them was when got into Sarasota, got settled in. A couple days later, did rehearsal, and they were just fucking blown away.
Yeah.
They were like, I can't believe, like, you know all this. They were throwing out songs that they don't even play, you know. Yeah, I can play that, you know, and just doing it. So I was in that band for a few years, and we ended up getting signed to the WWE started a record label called SmackDown Records. They wanted to get into the music business, and they started this label, and we put out our record, self-entitled Neurotica record. Came out in 2000, I want to say 2002. It may have came out in 2001, but I believe it's 2002. We ended up going on tour with Ozfest.
Yeah.
We did the Ozfest in 2002.
Cool.
In the middle of that tour, label decided they didn't want to do the music thing anymore. We pretty much got dropped. They put a bunch of money in the band and everything, and it was like, here's all this money, here's an awesome tour, you know, a record, and no, that's it. And we ended up splitting up after Ozfest. There was some troubles going on within the band and stuff, and it ended up disbanding. So I moved back up to Rockford for about 6 months, and braved through another horrible winter there. And then my drum tech, that was the guy that was teching for me on Ozfest, his name's Scott Yoverson. He's from San Antonio here and knows all the Union Underground guys and stuff, and which I met them because Neurotica played some shows with them and stuff.
Oh, I know. Like, for example, you just mentioned the Union Underground guys, and I know that you're good friends with Josh Pomello and those dudes. Yeah.
Oh yeah. I've just seen Josh recently. Yeah. But yeah, Scotty called me and was like, hey, there's this band, Pitbull Daycare, which I had heard him talk about Pitbull Daycare on the Ozfest tour. You always used to talk about them and Union Underground. And he's like, yeah, you know that band Pitbull Daycare I was talking about? I was like, yeah, well, they need a drummer, you know, you should come down and do it. I was like, all right. So I went online and went to their website and heard the first song. It was called Slut, which I'm sure you remember that one. And I listened to that song, and I was like, fuck yeah, I'll do this. So I called them back up. I was like, I'll be there in a week.
Yeah.
And, you know, I didn't know anybody here at all.
Yeah.
Nobody.
Did you know any of the dudes in the band?
Not at all.
Yeah.
Never even met them. Talked to Donnie maybe twice on the phone. And I hadn't talked to Bird or Stephen Bishop yet. I was going to stay with Stephen Bishop, so basically they just gave me his address, and I kind of called him when I was probably up in Austin or something, you know, hey, I'm getting close to San Antonio, where am I supposed to go, that type of thing. And got here, and then the whole Pitbull daycare thing started.
And you know, Bones, you know, left the group last year, and we had, you know, luckily we had Jason West fall into our lap. He was in the band Neurotica, and they were on Ozfest last year, and a mutual friend of ours was the drum tech, and you know, he got us in touch with him, and we sent him a CD, and that's how we got them both in the band. And yeah, I think it's made the sound a little bit fuller and a little bit a little heavier. I think it's the best the band has sounded in quite some time.
So let's talk a little bit about that, because, you know, Pitbull Daycare had, you know, definitely a very significant band in the history of heavy music in San Antonio. You know, several releases. I remember I went out to the video shoot out in the hill country that one time. Remember that?
Man, that was brutal.
I remember hands coming out from the ground, and I remember we were out there taking pictures and shooting video and stuff like that, man. So I remember, you know, being very involved with the band, and always kind of, you know, kind of like, where did this guy Jason come from? Who is he? Why don't I know about him? And back then, you know, I don't think it was widely known that, you know, you were a transplant into San Antonio. But yeah, I mean, so let's talk a little bit about your Pitbull days. Do you have any, when you think about Pitbull Daycare, you know, and the releases that you did, or shows that you did, you know, anything, any fond, you know, really fond memories that you think of about that time, or maybe things within the band that you really enjoyed?
Yeah, I mean, there are things. That whole thing was up and down for us. I mean, we did a lot of hard touring, you know, playing, you know, going and headlining ourselves around the U.S. You know, not being a big band, you know, we don't have any draw, you know, and it seemed like we always toured with bands, you know, for a while there that were just like, I remember we toured with this band called Vampire Moose, and I mean, it was a weird thing. They were from like St. Louis or something, and I mean, we were like playing to like 5 people a night, starving, you know, no money. We were driving around beat up old van all over the U.S. You know, there were some brutal times, you know, doing that, but there was some good stuff. You know, like I remember we played with Drowning Pool out at Javelina Harley, and I'm sure you were there for that. And I have video of that, and man, that was a cool show. I remember that being a lot of fun.
I remember I saw a couple of really kick-ass shows, like the tattoo. One time you guys did a tattoo show that was really cool. There's people dancing and stuff.
Yeah, we did that a couple times. Had the girls in the cages and all that stuff. Yeah, those were always fun. You know, my favorite thing that I did with them was basically the album You, Me, and the Devil Make Three is my favorite record by them, and that was after we had gotten dropped off of Cleopatra Records, and we put that out on our own. And
Great record.
It came out great because we did it totally ourselves, you know, produced it ourselves and everything. And the first song on that record, goddamn, what is it called? Should Have Known Better. I actually wrote on guitar. I came up with that and showed it to them, and they liked it. And dude, when I got the record, it was the first song on there. I was like, damn, that's pretty cool. So that was a big thing.
Yeah, that's a very significant song.
Yeah, it's a cool song, and like I'm just like, you know, I'm like, wow, like something I wrote actually got on a record, you know. So, you know, I tried writing riffs, you know, like when I was in Neurotica, you know, I'd try writing some riffs, and you know, we'd start jamming them, and then, you know, we'd start dissecting them, and then before you know it, it's not even the same. It's not even my riffs anymore, you know. So it was really cool to have something like that, you know, on that record, and you know, that's when we started going in more of the heavy, like, metal direction. We got John JB4 Valenzuela in the band, and you know, he's the ultimate metal rhythm guitar player, you know.
John, I almost wore my Uriel T-shirt tonight.
Should have busted it out.
I have it.
He'll be running sound for Riot tonight out there at the.
So, you know, you did your time in Pitbull, and you know, I shared with you off camera a few weeks ago that, you know, you have kind of transcended, you know, being, you know, the drummer in a band. You're kind of like your own artist now, and you're a working musician, and you're very dynamic with the things that you can play. Like you can play the electronic metal and really heavy stuff like Evil United and blues. I mean, you are really kind of a well-rounded drummer. So, and people know that, you know, post kind of Pitbull, or I don't know, even maybe during near the end of Pitbull, that you got involved with Sebastian Bach and stuff like that. So was it always kind of your mindset to be in that, to have the goal of, you know, I want to kind of be a working drummer, and, you know, if you know, you're going to bring me on board to go work with your band, and I'm down for that, and, you know, I can do Sebastian Bach, or I can do whatever, because, you know, there's the work, and then there's the bands that you really kind of want to be a part of. So how did that kind of whole transition happen for you? Were you always kind of like meeting people out on the road and kind of sharing people? I'm sure people were coming up to you and talking to you, and I guess it finally came to fruition when you got the Sebastian Bach gig, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'd always, you know, I mean, when I was young, all I knew is I wanted to make it somehow in music. I wanted to make it big, obviously, you know, as every musician aspires to do that. But, I mean, being able to do when I did Sebastian Bach, it was like right at the end of Pitbull Daycare. In fact, I found out the band was playing its last show when I was like over in, I think I was in like Australia or something. And I was like,
the band had officially not been over when you got the Sebastian Bach gig, and did you have to tell those guys, hey, I gotta do this?
Yeah, I mean, I remember I was actually at Stephen Bishop's house the day that I got the call, and a friend of mine from Florida, this was a Florida hookup too, this guy named Johnny Chromatic, he had a cover band in Florida called Chromatic, and I used to, you know, go out and party and get up and jam with those guys every once in a while. Well, then I had no idea he played with Sebastian Bach, and like a couple of other friends from Florida were trying to get a hold of me, and I don't even know if I had a cell phone at this time or whatever. I don't even remember how it happened, but I got in touch with Johnny on the phone, and he's like, yeah, dude, you know, we want you to play drums. You know, our drummer can't do it. Bobby Drozambek, another, I mean, San Antonio, that guy is, you know, he's the real deal, man. I mean, it's what I would love to be like that one day, but, you know, Bobby couldn't do that tour because of other things he had going on and stuff. And I had no idea he played with Sebastian, so I was like, your cover band is going and opening for Guns N' Roses, like, and doing dates in Japan and stuff. I was like, your cover band's doing that? And he's like, no, I play with Sebastian Bach. I was like, what are you talking about? I had never even had any idea. So, like, I was like, fuck yeah, I'll do that, you know.
So Bobby kind of helped you get that gig?
Well, I didn't know Bobby then. It was totally Johnny Chromatic that got me into it. And I remember getting off the phone, and there was a few people hanging out at Bishop's, and Bishop's like, what's up? I was like, I think I'm going to go play drums with Sebastian Bach like in a couple months and open for Guns N' Roses, and everybody in the room was just like, what the fuck? How did that come about?
Yeah.
I mean, when I did that, that's kind of how I started. Basically, after Pitbull, that's kind of how I started breaking out, is just doing my own things, and I've been in multiple bands at, you know, one time. I mean, up to like 7 bands at one time, you know, just whether it's, you know, working like cover bands, country bands, whatever, you know. I've just kind of, it just started going that way for me.
So really, you know, at the Sebastian Bach level, I mean, that's kind of a more worldwide, global kind of level. You know, you're playing to international audiences. What kind of experience was that for you, as far as the touring was concerned? Obviously, you know, you're not in a van anymore. You're doing big things, but with regards to like kind of seeing how the real business works, did that open your eyes a lot to a lot of that, the back end stuff, or were you already kind of familiar with that stuff?
I mean, I was kind of familiar with it, but it did, you know, I did learn some things from it. You know, one regret I have about that situation was, you know, my partying days. Right. And I mean, I partied when I was out with him. So I mean, I played a lot of shows hungover and just like, you know, at that point, like I really should have, you know, straightened up. I mean, I played the shows and did good. Sebastian was happy, and, you know, and everything. You know, I did my job, but if I could do it differently, I mean, that's the one thing I would change about it, and I think it would have been a lot better experience. But it was an amazing experience. I mean, one of the first places we played was a place in Japan, and I remember Sebastian telling me right before we went on stage, he's like, dude, this is where Judas Priest Unleashing the East recorded that record here.
Oh, yeah.
Cool. It's like, God damn, man, you gotta tell me that right before I go on stage. Like, that's just gonna be going through my brain, because that is like my favorite all-time live record. You know, I remember listening to that as a kid, and it's like, damn, man, this is badass. Yeah, on the same stage. You know, when I was looking out, you know, when I was up there, I was like, wow, I can't believe this. And then, so we did like a few dates in Japan with Sebastian headlining, and then we met up with Guns N' Roses. Yeah. And that was just crazy, because it was, you know, like big arenas, you know, and 20,000 people, you know, and I just remember like being backstage and before we go on and peeking around the guitar amps, I'm just like, dude, this is freaking crazy. Legit, right? Totally crazy. But that was a real fun thing to do, and I'm very fortunate to have that just fall in my lap like that. I mean, that came out of nowhere.
It kind of seems like, you know, as you kind of strive for that career, or you know, attaining a certain level of success, you know, that you obviously paid your dues, and you're obviously your talents were kind of starting to pay off now, you know, and doing big and national bands. So you know, you did Sebastian Bach for a little bit, then. I know before we started shooting, we were talking about Brian Scott, you know, and you know, of course, his beginnings with Union Underground, and now with his last band, Cult to Follow, you kind of became part of that too. So are you like friends with Brian? How did you get involved with Cult to Follow?
Yeah, oh yeah, I'm definitely still friends with Brian to this day. I got involved with him. Brian contacted Todd Connolly, the Bird, from Pitbull Daycare. And Todd called me, and he was like, hey, dude, Brian is doing this new project called Cult to Follow, and he was living in Vegas at the time. And Bird was saying he was going to move back to San Antonio and wanted me and him and Troy Dubler from Alienation and another San Antonio legend. And I was like, hell yeah, that sounds cool, you know? So... yeah, we just started getting together and jamming that. Brian sent me all the songs, and you know, I learned them, and then we just started hashing them out in rehearsals, and then nothing. I don't, you know, people ask me like, what happened to that band, and I'm kind of like, I'm as clueless as they are. I'm like, it's just like we were going, and then just it kind of just stopped. I don't know. Yeah. Didn't really officially break up or anything. We just didn't play. We haven't played any shows in probably like 3 years now, maybe. Yeah,
yeah. I remember at that time, you guys were doing some pretty decent shows, and I was kind of waiting for you know, for a climax, and it just never kind of happened. Everything kind of just faded out.
Yeah, I was really shocked, because I mean, I thought that stuff, you know, a lot of people like that stuff, and I thought, you know, I thought it was like, you know, as far as like radio rock music, man, I mean, if that doesn't have what it takes, I mean, then obviously I don't know, you know. I mean, those were like radio songs, like crazy, you know. And
I think you know, especially with some of the success that Brian has had, you know, I guess, you know, there's a certain level of expectation, you know, and if we can't do something big and grand, then, you know, let's not do it, man, because, you know, I want to be big and grand. And I think Brian Scott is one of those people, and I think that's one of the reasons that he has so many fans, and that people really respect him, because everything he does is big and grand. So, Brian, I hope you're watching, man. You're next. So now, you know, I want to touch a little bit about the fact that you mentioned something earlier. And, you know, people who know you and follow you and support you and have for many years, and I was looking at some old video of you just today, you know, and I was like, man, I've been a fan of Shakes for over 10 years now. And but people who follow you, for example, on social media, kind of know that, you've kind of gone through some struggles, and earlier you alluded to the fact that, you were maybe partying a little bit too much during your Sebastian Bach days, and now I think people are aware that you've kind of embraced sobriety now. And when people kind of talk about, life changes, because that is a life change, especially in the business that you're in, the rock and roll business, I can't even imagine, how challenging that is. But even myself, as a fan and someone who thought, oh, I know Shakes, I never really knew that you were kind of dealing with some of these issues. And maybe a lot of people out there before your announcement knew either. So for those people, I mean, just share a little bit about the clarity, because I don't know if people really understand, you can say, oh yeah, well, I drink, but I'm a rock and roller, but, I think there comes a point where it gets so overbearing that you realize that something has to change. And I applaud you, because, you're smart enough to have done it.
It was funny because, like, I never drank, you know how, like, teenagers are, they'll drink and stuff, when they're kids, and,
yeah.
I was never, because I had music, I never got into partying like that. Like, right. I was not, I hung out with the kids, with the kids that would do that stuff, and I don't know, when I was like 24, when I joined Erotica, that's kind of when my partying days started, and it went from, like, I'm either like all or nothing, so it went from, being totally straight sober dude to just drinking and partying my ass off, through the Pitbull days. I mean, life for me at that point, it was hard for all of us. I mean, we were all struggling. We were broke. That band was a big stress on everybody, every member,
Right.
And I just kind of didn't care, I just party, drink, I'm constantly hungover, drunk, hungover. It's just, it just keeps on going. But
were you drinking even when you weren't doing band stuff? Let's say if you were just at home or just hanging out, were you also drinking too?
Oh, hell yeah, because I was working in clubs at that time.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I was always around it and just doing it, And I've always just kind of been the partier dude, and I've recently got married, within, it'll be 5 years next year. And it's just like, my life is like totally done a 180, where I'm like, wow, I'm actually like totally happy now. Like, life's good. Why am I still partying? And, I'm
risking everything,
right. and drinking to the point where I black out, and, then it starts putting strain on your relationship at home and stuff, and and just, my playing, I mean, my playing probably did suffer through it. I mean, I used to, like, watch videos of myself and just be like, am I fucking up because I'm drunk,
Yeah.
And I kind of knew what level I could take it at before, like, it was really going to start affecting my
Right.
playing, but I mean, it just started getting worse and worse, especially, like, I'd be out on the road with Wednesday 13, and that always, like, those tours were always just like the same thing. Like, the first day I'd show up, feel good, and play the first show, and then party my ass off, and then the rest of the tour I feel like shit, or I'm drunk. They just wake up with a hangover, and, like, man, at sound check I'm drinking a beer, just trying to get through it. And I mean, it's, it really, it's affecting my health, and making me depressed. Like, it was just adding to depression, just stuff I don't even know what, I don't even know what I'm depressed about. My, life's good. It was just, I mean, they say the first step, to recovery is admitting you're an alcoholic. I mean, dude, I admitted that years ago. I mean, I'd make a joke about it. Yeah, I'm an alcoholic. I'm fucking drunk. Whatever. I mean, so there was no, that first step wasn't hard for me. I'm like, yeah, I know I'm an alcoholic and definitely powerless
Right.
against, with alcohol. I mean, I can't just, like, have a couple beers and chill out. It's always like, it's like when I'm playing, I'm beating the drums as hard as I possibly can. I kind of went on like a a couple day bender like last Halloween,
Yeah.
and I was totally drunk and just told my wife and her mother to please take me to rehab, and it was something that I was kind of thinking about probably in the last like 3 months up to when I quit. It was, you know, it was rehab. You know, I kind of started thinking about that. Because I knew I couldn't quit on my own. There'd be nights I'd go play a gig. I'm like, I'm not going to drink tonight, and get there, and next thing you know, I'm like, well, I'll just have a beer. Yeah, I'm hammered, but it was getting to the point to where I was like drinking during the day, like hiding alcohol around the house. Go sip a couple drinks. I had a bad weekend Halloween, and I remember it was on a Saturday that I had gotten drunk, and I started an argument with my wife, probably over nothing, stupid stuff, and then the next day I remember I woke up and I was hungover, and we went to her grandmother's house to hang out with the family, and over there at their place they got like a closet just full of like liquor and stuff, and I was like, well, man, if I have a shot, it'll make me feel better, like I can get through this, Well, that led into, drank like a half a bottle of rum that day, and my wife was like, what is going on, I was seriously worried about you, and that was when I was like, you know what, just let's find a rehab place and take me in.